Hare Krishna, revision of chapter number 13 of Bhagavad Gita. Let's see the connection between 12 and 13. And before we do that, let's do little prayers to our Gurudev so that we can repeat whatever we have learned from him. Om Agyantrimarandasya Gyananjan Shalakya Chakshrunalintam Yen Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. My Dandavat Pranam to my Diksha Guru Shri Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. My Dandavat Pranam to my Shiksha Gurus and my Dandavat Pranam to all listeners who would be listening to this video. Now, coming back, the connection between chapter number 12 and chapter number 13, this is a transitional chapter. In chapter number 1 to 6 of Bhagavad Gita, we had learned about Karma Yoga, and in chapter number 7 to 12, we have learned about Bhakti Yoga. In chapter number 12, Bhagwan had concluded about Bhakti Yoga, how to reach him through Bhakti. And he had mentioned about the qualities required in a devotee, which he likes and which will help him to come back to the abode of Krishna Bhagwanji. And in 13th chapter, Bhagwanji is still very determined to help the devotees, to help the human beings to come out of this repeated cycle of birth and death. And now he says he can be also achieved, he can be also reached through the Gyan Yoga, through knowledge. And to help us understand about this route, this path, Arjun asks 6 questions in the first shlok on behalf of the human beings so that we can learn how to come out of this human body, how our Atma or soul can come out of this human body permanently, and it does not have to take the repeated cycle of birth and death. And these 6 questions which Arjun asks are the Prakriti or the nature, Purush or the enjoyer, Kshetra or the field or the human body, or the Kshetragya or the knower of the field, that is the Atma and Paramatma, and then Gyan, the knowledge, and lastly Gyanam, the object of knowledge, the soul and the super soul, the Paramatma. So to repeat the 6 questions, Prakriti, Purush, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Gyan, and Gyanam. In Shlok number 2 and 3, Krishna Bhagwanji mentions about the field or the body. And then he says that if one is able to control his senses, then the body will work only towards bhakti. And then it will be conducive to reach him. So in Shlok number 4 and 5, Krishna Bhagwanji mentions that this topic of soul, super soul, and the body or the field of activities is also described and spoken in elaboration by the rishis of the past in Vedas and in Shastras. So not only Krishna Bhagwanji is telling about the body and the soul and the super soul, even the rishis, when they meditated, they had experienced about what is body, what is the constituents of the body, and they have also mentioned in the Shastras. Then in Shlok number 6 and 7, important, the Bhagwanji mentions about the 24 elements which constitute our human body. And these are the 5 Mahabhuta and the 5 senses, then 5 working senses, 5 sense objects, and then above this, there is false ego, intelligence, the 3 modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and the mind. So these are the 24 elements which constitute our body. And the knower of all these elements is called the Purusha or the soul or the Atma. And then Bhagwanji says, not only Purusha knows about the 24 elements, even I know the 24 elements of the human beings, not only of human beings, but of the entire living beings. So that is the knowledge which Krishna Bhagwan Ji gives. Then from Shlok number 8 to 12, Bhagwan Ji gives the process of gaining knowledge. And he gives 20 processes by which knowledge can be gained. And what is this knowledge? The knowledge to come out of this human body, birth and death again and again. That is the knowledge. And the most important part of this gaining knowledge is the what you call devotional service or bhakti. If we do not do devotional service as a process to gain the knowledge, then all the other 20 processes are of no use. And of the other elements or process of knowledge, humility or being humble is also one of the most important ones. Do not try to reach the top, whatever you are doing. Do not try to reach the richness that you are the most richest person, you are the most strongest person, you are the most influential person, right? Don't try to reach those things of material nature. Try to reach the maximum and the highest levels of bhakti or devotional service. That is what Bhagavan Ji gives about the Shlok number 8 to 12 about the knowledge. Then in Shlok number 13 to 19, Krishna Bhagavan Ji teaches us about the Jnanam or the soul and the super soul. Here Bhagavan Ji says it's very difficult to understand these topics, but only a devotee in the company of other devotees and under the guidance of a guru can understand this. And about the soul and the super soul, Bhagavan Ji mentioned that soul is inferior to super soul. And Paramatma is, or the super soul is the controller of everything. He is the enjoyer of everything in the material world. And he is the doer of everything. So that is the soul and the super soul or the Jnanam Bhagavan Ji gives in Shlok number 13 to 19. Then in Shlok number 20 to 26, Bhagavan Ji teaches us about the Prakriti and the Purusha, the three modes of nature. Whatever is happening to human beings, it is because of goodness, passion, and ignorance, the three modes of nature. The Atma residing within our body, it desires to enjoy certain things. Then super soul or the Paramatma sanctions it if we are eligible to enjoy that particular thing of that desire. And once super soul sanctions it, then Atma, with the help of the Prakriti or the nature, is able to enjoy that. So please remember, the Atma desires, the super soul sanctions, and the nature fulfills the desire only after the Paramatma has sanctioned it. Right. So that is about the Shlok number 20 to 26. And then in Shlok number last phase of the chapter number 13, 27 to 35, Bhagwan Ji talks about the Gyan or the vision. How to obtain the supreme goal of reaching the abode of Krishna Bhagwan Ji. And he also uses these three elements, the nature, the soul, and the super soul. And he takes the example of sky and the sun. Just as the sky is unlimited and the above us at the top, it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the soul does not mix up with anything in our inside the body. It is eternal, right? And then there is super soul also residing as an observer inside our body. So he discusses more details about this thing in the last phase of the this chapter, Shlok number 27 to 35, by giving the example of the sky. The sky does not mix up with anything. Similarly, the soul also does not mix up with anything in the body. It passes on to another body, or it ultimately passes to the abode of Krishna Bhagavan Ji. Then he gives the example also of the sun. Just as the sun, when it rises, it illuminates the entire universe. Similarly, the soul inside, the super soul residing inside, it guides and it moves the body, it illuminates the body inside, as long as the soul and the super soul are there inside the body. Once the soul and the super soul they move out of the body is finished. It is mixes up with the material nature. It's of no use. So this is what Bhagwan Ji says about the Gyan. He says, whoever understands this knowledge, he is the person who has realized Bhagwan Ji, who is able to reach him through this knowledge. So that is the end of chapter number 35. We shall continue chapter number 13 and total shloks 35. And we shall now continue with chapter number 14, shlok by shlok. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.